Emily always believed silence had a sound. It wasn't loud and it wasn't sharp. But it could fill a room the way cold air did, quiet, heavy, and impossible to ignore. That night, when her husband Daniel stopped at the bottom of the staircase, the silence around them felt louder than anything they had said in weeks. He stood so still that Emily wondered if he had forgotten how to move. His hand rested on the railing, but he didn't take a single step up. He just hovered there as if something invisible held him in place. She was standing near the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a small towel. She had spent the whole evening trying to keep herself busy wiping counters, folding laundry, rearranging things that didn't need rearranging. Anything to avoid the truth that she and her husband hadn't spoken more than 5 meaningful sentences all week. But when she looked at him now, she felt her heart push against her ribs, almost too tight to breathe. He should have gone upstairs already. He said he was tired. He said he needed rest because work had drained him again. They had fallen into that routine, lately simple words, simple updates, nothing personal, nothing deep. She would watch him climb the stairs each night, disappearing into a quiet room with a quiet voice. And she would stay downstairs pretending she didn't care. But tonight, he didn't go. He stayed exactly where he was, Daniel, she said softly. He didn't answer. He looked up the stairs, then back at her, then at the stairs again, as if both directions were pulling him in different ways. After a moment, he let out a slow breath and finally turned his body toward her. His face looked tired, not just from work, but from something deeper, something that had settled between them for months. "I was going to go up," he said, his voice gentle, almost too gentle for how distant he had been recently. "But I think I need to stay downstairs for a moment." Emily blinked, unsure what that meant. Stay for what? He never stayed. If something was bothering him, he kept it locked away. It had become their quiet pattern. He hid. She waited. Nothing happened, but this time something was different. She saw it in his eyes, something shifting, something loosening. She put the towel down slowly, afraid that moving too quickly would push him away again. "What's wrong?" she asked, keeping her tone even. He hesitated before speaking. "I don't want to walk away tonight." The way he said her nickname made her chest warm in a way she hadn't felt in months. It carried emotion, the kind that didn't appear by accident. Daniel hardly used nicknames anymore. Their conversations had become practical, distant, polite. But now, standing at the foot of the stairs, he looked like a man who finally reached the edge of something he couldn't ignore. Emily studied him carefully. The room felt smaller, as if everything around them had pulled back so the moment could take center stage. "You can tell me," she said, "whatever it is." Daniel looked down at his hands. I've been thinking too much," he admitted, "and not talking enough." Emily's heart tightened. She had waited so long to hear something that honest. He stepped away from the staircase, walking toward the living room with slow, careful steps. Emily watched him sit on the edge of the couch, his elbows resting on his knees. He seemed restless, like he was searching for words he had lost somewhere along the way. She didn't sit beside him, not yet. She stood a few steps away, giving him space to speak, afraid to interrupt whatever was finally breaking through his silence. Daniel rubbed his palms together, a habit he always had when he felt uncertain. "Every night I go upstairs and pretend everything is fine," he said quietly. "I pretend we're okay, that nothing's slipping apart. But I don't think I can pretend anymore." Emily felt the words hit her like a cold breeze. She had been afraid to admit the same thing, afraid that if she spoke it out loud it would make everything worse. He kept talking, faster now, as if the words were coming out before he could stop them. "I didn't want to worry you. I didn't want to start a fight. So I kept holding everything in. But tonight, when I reached the stairs, something in me said I shouldn't go up. Not without talking to you first." Emily swallowed, her throat suddenly tight. Talking about what? Daniel looked up, meeting her eyes with a level of sincerity she hadn't seen from him in so long. "Us," he said. "And what's been happening between us?" The room went quiet again. But this time the silence felt expectant, like the moment right before a storm breaks. Not with destruction, but with release. Emily took a small step forward. "Daniel, if something's wrong, I want to know. I'm here." He nodded slowly. "I know, and that's why I stayed downstairs tonight." She moved closer, just enough to feel the warmth of his presence. "Then tell me," she said softly. "Tell me why you really stayed." Daniel rested his head in his hands for a moment before he spoke again. "I stayed because I didn't want the distance between us to grow any more than it already has." Emily felt her chest tighten. She had felt that distance every day during dinner, in the car, in their quiet evenings. It wasn't loud, but it was strong enough to pull them apart inch by inch. Daniel looked around the living room, his eyes landing on everything they had built. Together, photos on the wall, old books on the shelf, the blanket they bought during their first winter together. Something in his expression softened, almost breaking. "I miss the way we used to talk," he said. "I miss the way we used to look at each other. And I hate that I let everything become so quiet between us." Emily didn't know when her breath had started shaking, but she steadied herself. "I miss those things too." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if her words hit him harder than he expected. "I didn't climb the stairs because I didn't want another night of silence. Not tonight. Not anymore." His voice carried a kind of sincerity she had almost forgotten he could show. It made her feel seen again, understood again, and that stirred something inside her hope. But cautious hope. She sat on a chair across from him, not too far, but not next to him yet. "What changed tonight?" she asked. Daniel leaned back slightly, searching for an answer. "I think it's been building for a long time. But tonight, when I put my foot on the first step, it felt wrong. It felt like I was walking away from you. And I didn't want to do that." Emily lowered her voice. "Then don't." He looked up again, meeting her eyes directly. "That's why I'm here. I want to tell you something, but I want to say it right. And I didn't want to say it through a closed door or from halfway up the stairs." She waited, holding her breath without meaning to. Daniel inhaled, his voice just above a whisper. "Emily, there's something I haven't been honest about. Something I should have said a long time ago." Her pulse quickened. "What is it?" He exhaled slowly, like he was preparing himself for a truth he couldn't hide anymore. But instead of saying it, he paused, studying her face, her hands. The familiar softness he always admired, even when they were drifting apart. The pause stretched into a long moment, tense but gentle. And then he said quietly, "I don't want to lose what we still have." Emily's breath caught. The room seemed to hold still with them, waiting for what would happen next. His voice softened even more. "That's why I stayed. Because I can't walk away tonight. Not when I feel like something important is slipping." For a moment, Emily couldn't speak. Her heart felt full and unsteady, like it didn't know whether to break or heal. Daniel watched her, waiting, nervous, hopeful. And before she could find the right words, something shifted between them, an invisible door opening. A silent understanding forming. Whatever he was about to say next, Emily knew it would change everything. He leaned forward, his hands clasped, and whispered, "Emily, there's something you need to know." And then the moment froze, unfinished, fragile, waiting. A truth on the edge of being spoken. A marriage on the edge of turning back toward the light. A night that refused to let either of them hide anymore. Daniel sat on the edge of the couch, shoulders tense, hands clasped tightly between his knees. The dim light of the living room cast long shadows, softening the lines of worry and fatigue on his face. Emily stood near the staircase, uncertain whether to approach or stay. She felt the weight of months of silence pressing down on both of them. And she wasn't sure if she could trust the moment, or if it would slip away like every other attempt they had made at honesty. But something in the way he sat, the way he avoided the stairs entirely, told her this was different. Tonight, he was willing to face whatever had been holding him back. "I know I've been distant," Gadia began, his voice low and careful. It wasn't an excuse, and it wasn't blame. It was a confession, raw and unpolished. Emily swallowed hard, feeling her chest tighten. She had waited for this for weeks, months even, and the words finally came. And cold. And unfair. I've treated you like, I don't know, like someone I could take for granted. Emily's throat caught. She had spent countless nights replaying the same questions in her mind. Had she done something wrong? Was it her fault? Or had life just carried them apart? Hearing him say it aloud, acknowledging it without hesitation, sent a small spark of hope through her. You think it's your fault? She asked quietly, her voice trembling just enough for him to notice. No, Daniel said quickly, shaking his head. It's mine. Entirely mine. I was scared. Scared that I couldn't make you happy anymore. Scared that my mistakes had built walls between us I wouldn't be able to tear down. Emily moved a few steps closer, the floorboards creaking softly under her feet. Her heart was beating fast, a mixture of relief and anticipation. It had been a long time since Daniel had opened up like this. She almost didn't recognize him. And yet, it was the man she had married, the one who cared enough to finally admit he was wrong. The one willing to fight for them even when it was uncomfortable. Daniel continued, his words spilling out with a nervous intensity. I went upstairs every night pretending everything was fine, pretending the distance didn't exist. But the truth is, I was afraid of losing you. Afraid that I'd drift so far away you'd forget the man you married. Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had been holding her own fears quietly for so long, hiding them behind routines and polite conversations. But hearing his admission made all of her own anxiety feel valid, acknowledged. It was like a weight lifting off her chest. Daniel, she whispered, her voice breaking just a little. I never forgot you. Not for a moment. His eyes softened, glistening slightly in the warm glow of the lamp. I know that now. I should have known it then. I was too wrapped up in my own fears to see it. But tonight, something in me told me I couldn't climb those stairs. I couldn't go to bed and pretend we were okay when I knew we weren't. I needed to talk to you. I needed to stay here. With you. Emily's heart was pounding. The quiet that had once felt suffocating now felt like a bridge between them. She took another step, slowly, deliberately closing the gap between them. She sat beside him on the couch, careful not to crowd him, but close enough for her presence to be felt. The warmth of his body was comforting, and for the first time in weeks, she felt the room shrink into a private space just for the two of them. Daniel exhaled deeply, his hands relaxing slightly as she settled beside him. I missed this, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I missed talking to you like we used to. I missed feeling connected, not just living in the same house. Emily reached out, placing a hand gently over his. I missed it too, she said softly. I felt like we were strangers sometimes, but I always hoped we could find our way back. His grip tightened slightly over hers, a small but reassuring sign that he felt the same way. I stayed because I don't want to lose you, Emily. Not to silence, not to distance, not to fear. I stayed because I want to fight for us, for everything we built together. I can't let months of quiet turn into years of regret. Emily felt a lump in her throat. Months of quiet. Years of regret. She had imagined scenarios like this countless times in her mind, hoping that one day they would sit down and finally speak honestly. And now it was happening. The words he spoke were exactly what she had longed to hear, the affirmation that he still cared, that he still wanted to be with her fully and completely. She leaned a little closer, her head brushing against his shoulder. Then stay, she whispered. Don't go upstairs tonight. Stay here with me. Daniel turned his head slightly, resting it gently against hers. I want to, he said. More than I can say. And I'm going to. As long as you'll let me. Emily closed her eyes, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The tension that had built between them over weeks of distance seemed to dissolve in that small gesture. Just sitting together, sharing this quiet honesty, was enough to remind them of what they had always been to each other: partners, friends, lovers, and confidants. I've missed you, Daniel whispered again, more to himself than to her. I've missed us. Emily tilted her head to look at him. We're here now, she said softly. We can start again. Right here, right now. Daniel's lips curved into a small, relieved smile. Right here. Right now, he echoed. Like a promise to himself as much as to her. They sat in silence for a few moments, letting the comfort of each other's presence fill the room. There was no need for words, no need for grand gestures, just the acknowledgement that they were together again. And that made all the difference. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice steady but gentle. I want us to talk more, to share things, even the small stuff. I don't want us to hide behind routines and walls anymore. I want honesty. I want closeness. I want us back. Emily nodded, feeling tears prick the corners of her eyes. I want that too, she said. And I think we can, if we both try. He turned his head fully to look at her, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief, hope, and vulnerability. I'll try, he said. I promise I'll try. And in that moment, Emily realized something important. It wasn't about big gestures or dramatic confessions. It wasn't about perfect timing or flawless words. It was about choosing each other again and again, even when life felt distant. Even when fear made them hesitate, she reached out and gently took his face in her hands. Then we start tonight, she said. No more pretending. No more silence. We start here. Daniel leaned into her touch, letting himself feel the comfort and warmth he had been avoiding for so long. Here, he agreed. With you. The clock ticked quietly in the background, the night stretching on around them. But for once, the passage of time didn't matter. They weren't focused on tomorrow or next week or the mistakes of the past. They were focused on this moment trail, honest. And Emily rested her head against his shoulder again, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Daniel wrapped his arm around her, pulling her slightly closer. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't passionate in the flashy way movies sometimes showed. But it was intimate, grounding, and full of meaning. It was the intimacy of two people reconnecting, of hearts realigning, of love quietly reaffirming itself. I'm staying, Daniel whispered into her hair, his voice low and certain. For real this time. I'm not going anywhere. Emily closed her eyes, letting herself believe him. The ache she had carried in her chest for weeks of fear, the loneliness, the distance started to ease. The room was warm, the lights soft, and the quiet between them no longer felt heavy. It felt full of potential, full of love, full of the promise that they could rebuild what had been lost. They stayed like that for hours, talking quietly, sharing small memories, laughing softly at little things that reminded them of the life they had once had could still have. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people choosing to stay, choosing to reconnect, choosing to fight for each other. And when sleep finally began to call them, they didn't climb the stairs. They stayed in the living room, wrapped in blankets, in each other's arms, feeling closer than they had in months. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't a magical resolution. But it was real, and it was theirs. The night passed quietly. The house was still. Upstairs remained empty, not because the night was over, but because it didn't matter anymore. Daniel had chosen to stay, and Emily had chosen to trust him again in the soft glow of the living room lamp. With the city lights twinkling through the window, they sat together, two hearts beating in slow harmony, ready to face whatever came next, dashed together. And in that moment, Emily realized something she had almost forgotten. Love wasn't about never making mistakes. It wasn't about perfect timing or endless certainty. It was about staying even when it was hard. It was about choosing each other every day, and tonight they had chosen each other.